Be me, 47 years old, former Director of Human Resources at a mid-sized logistics company, 14 years climbing the corporate ladder, MBA from a respectable program, certified in conflict resolution, DEI implementation, workplace safety protocols. Built my entire career on the belief that I was making workplaces better for women, safer, more equitable, free from the casual cruelties men inflict without even noticing. 3 years ago, I finally had the power to create the workplace I'd always envisioned. CEO gave me full authority to address the culture problems after we lost 2 discrimination lawsuits. Handed me a mandate and a budget. Told me to fix it. I fixed it. 18 months later, the company filed for bankruptcy. 230 people lost their jobs. And I'm sitting in a studio apartment, unhireable, trying to understand how everything I built turned to ash. Started with the obvious cases. Genuinely problematic men. The ones who made comments, who stood too close, who turned every conversation into an opportunity to look down blouses. Those terminations felt righteous, felt necessary. The women in the office thanked me, said they finally felt safe coming to work. That validation was intoxicating. I wanted more of it. Began hosting sensitivity trainings, mandatory, 4 hours every quarter. Taught employees to recognize microaggressions, the subtle ways men assert dominance, interrupting, explaining things women already knew, taking up too much space in meetings, making eye contact for too long, not making enough eye contact. The list grew longer each session. Created an anonymous reporting system, encouraged women to document everything, every comment, every glance, every feeling of discomfort. Promised swift action, promised accountability, promised that their voices would finally be heard. The reports started trickling in, then flooding. Kevin in accounting, 53 years old, 22 years with the company. Someone reported that he called a female colleague sweetheart during a stressful deadline. Said it made her feel diminished. I called him in, explained the complaint, watched his face crumble as he realized his career was in jeopardy over a word he'd used his entire life without malice. Gave him a formal warning. He apologized, seemed genuinely confused but willing to learn. Second complaint 3 weeks later. He'd offered to help a junior analyst carry boxes to her car. She felt it implied she wasn't capable. I terminated him. Documented it as pattern of gendered behavior creating hostile work environment. He cried in my office, told me he was just trying to be helpful, that he'd been raised to help people. I told him, intent doesn't matter, impact does. His wife called me the next day, told me they had a daughter in college, a mortgage, medical bills. Asked me what they were supposed to do now. I said I was sorry, but the process had to be followed. That accountability matters. Hung up feeling righteous, feeling like I'd done something important. Marcus in operations. 41. Best logistics coordinator we had. Client relationships worth millions. Someone reported that during a team lunch, he'd made a joke about his wife being a terrible driver. The woman who reported it wasn't even part of the conversation. She'd overheard from another table. Said it created an atmosphere of casual sexism. I gave Marcus a written warning. He was confused. Said it was a joke about his wife specifically, not women generally. Said his wife tells the same joke about herself. I explained that context doesn't excuse impact. That humor at women's expense, even one woman, normalizes disrespect. Month later, another complaint. He'd complimented a colleague's presentation by saying she was articulate. The colleague felt it was a microaggression, implying surprise that a woman could present well. I terminated him. Watched our biggest client relationship collapse within 6 weeks because his replacement couldn't manage the account. Daniel, in IT, 28, quiet kid, kept to himself, did his job well. Someone reported feeling uncomfortable around him. When I pressed for specifics, she couldn't give any. He just gave her a weird vibe, made her feel unsafe in ways she couldn't articulate. I put him on administrative leave while I investigated. Investigation found nothing. No complaints from anyone else, no inappropriate behavior documented, just one person's feeling about his presence. I let him go anyway. Couldn't risk keeping someone who made even one woman feel unsafe. Documented it as failure to create inclusive environment. 14 terminations in the first year, 11 men. Every single one justified by complaints, documented with proper procedures, legally defensible. I was building a safer workplace one removal at a time. Women kept thanking me, kept saying the office felt different now, lighter, freer. I glowed with purpose. By month 16, our workforce had shifted dramatically. Started at 58% male, now sat at 31%. The leadership team had flipped from 7 men and 3 women to 2 men and 8 women. The men who remained had learned to be quiet, to stay in their lanes, to never offer help unless explicitly asked, to never compliment, to never joke, to keep their eyes on their screens and their mouths shut. I'd created exactly what I wanted. A workplace where women didn't have to navigate male egos and male entitlement. Then the cracks started showing. First quarter after my transformation, productivity metrics dropped 23%. I blamed adjustment period, integration challenges, growing pains. Second quarter, down another 18%. Operations began missing deadlines. Client complaints tripled. Started paying attention to patterns I'd been ignoring. The warehouse still needed loading and unloading. Trucks still needed physical labor. Before, the men had just done it. Stayed late when shipments ran behind. Came in early when trucks arrived off schedule. Nobody asked them to. They just did. Now, those tasks sat undone. Asked the women in operations to cover. They refused. Said it wasn't in their job descriptions. Said they hadn't been hired for physical labor. Filed complaints when I pressed the issue. Had a loading dock crisis when 3 trucks arrived simultaneously during a staffing gap. Needed all hands helping to avoid demurrage charges. Sent company-wide email asking for volunteers. 4 responses, all from the remaining men. The women either didn't reply or sent explanations about why they couldn't help. Bad backs, childcare pickups, prior commitments. One said physical labor made her uncomfortable and asked if my request constituted a hostile work environment. Overtime became a ghost. Used to be we could count on people staying late when deadlines loomed. The men had done it without complaint, often without even being asked. Just saw what needed doing and did it. The women wouldn't stay. Had boundaries, had lives, had priorities outside work. All valid, all reasonable, all things I'd have defended in any other context. But when everyone has boundaries and no one will cross them, work doesn't get done. Had a project crisis in month 18. Major client needed a proposal by Monday morning. Found out Friday at 4 p.m. Old team would have ordered pizza, pulled an all-nighter, made it happen. War stories for years, bonding through shared sacrifice. New team, gone by 5:15. One person offered to try to look at it over the weekend, but made no promises. Monday came, proposal wasn't ready. Client walked. Contract worth $2.3 million annually. Started noticing other patterns. Difficult clients. The demanding ones, the unreasonable ones, the ones who yelled and threatened and made working with them miserable. The men had handled them, absorbed the abuse, managed the relationships, kept the revenue flowing. Complained about it privately, but did it anyway. Women refused. Said they shouldn't have to endure verbal abuse. Said difficult clients were above their pay grade. Said management should handle it. When management was also women who didn't want to handle it, the clients went unmanaged. Then they went elsewhere. Travel to remote sites. Part of logistics is going where the problems are. Warehouses in sketchy neighborhoods. Overnight trips to distant facilities. Long drives to client locations. Men had done it without question. Women wanted guarantees of safety, wanted companions, wanted daylight-only visits, wanted accommodations that made many trips impractical or impossible. I understood. I did. The world isn't safe for women the way it's safe for men. Every precaution was reasonable in isolation, but reasonable precautions multiplied across an entire workforce meant work didn't get done. The complaints didn't stop either. They shifted. Women started reporting other women, tone policing, cliques, exclusion, gossip. Someone felt undermined in a meeting. Someone felt a colleague was trying to sabotage her. Someone felt another woman was getting favorable treatment. The reports were constant, exhausting. Every day brought new grievances that required documentation and investigation. I'd removed the men to create peace and discovered women could create their own wars. Month 20. CEO called me in, showed me the numbers. Revenue down 34%, costs up 21%, client retention at historic lows. Employee satisfaction surveys showed complaints about workload, about impossible deadlines, about lack of support. He asked what happened. I told him we were still in transition, still adjusting, still finding our footing. He looked at me with something that might have been pity, said the board was concerned, said investors were asking questions, said we might need to make changes. I left that meeting understanding, for the first time, that my mandate might have limits. Began quietly reaching out to former employees, the terminated men. Tried to gauge interest in returning. Most wouldn't take my calls. Kevin's wife answered once, laughed bitterly, and hung up. Marcus had moved across the country for a new job. Said he'd never work anywhere I had influence again. Daniel, the quiet kid I'd let go for giving someone a weird vibe, had a lawyer contact me. Wrongful termination suit. His attorney had somehow obtained internal communications showing we'd terminated him without documented cause. Settlement cost the company $340,000. 3 more lawsuits followed. Men I'd removed finding their own ways to fight back. Each one defensible in isolation, each one another crack in the foundation. Month 22, company announced layoffs. 40 positions eliminated. Month 23, another 30. I kept my job through both rounds, kept believing I could fix it. Month 25, we lost our largest client. Logistics contract worth $8 million annually. They'd been with us for 17 years. Left because we couldn't meet delivery schedules, couldn't staff the warehouse, couldn't maintain the service levels they'd come to expect. The CEO resigned. Board brought in a turnaround specialist. He took one look at our personnel files, our termination records, our complaint documentation, and called me into his office. Asked me to explain my philosophy. I gave him my speech. Safe workplaces, accountability, believing women, creating environments free from male aggression and entitlement. He listened without interrupting. Then he pulled up a spreadsheet, showed me productivity by department mapped against my terminations. Every single termination correlated with decreased output in that department, without exception. Showed me client retention rates, showed me overtime hours, showed me the metrics I'd ignored while I was busy counting complaints. Asked me a question I still think about. Did you ever consider that the men you removed might have been doing things that didn't show up on job descriptions? Things that kept the whole system running? I didn't have an answer. He terminated me that afternoon, walked me out with a security escort, packed my 14 years into a cardboard box. Company filed for bankruptcy 4 months later. 230 people lost their jobs. The women I'd tried to protect, the men I'd let stay, everyone, all of it, gone. Started job searching. Discovered my reputation preceded me. The lawsuits were public record. The bankruptcy made news in trade publications. When employers searched my name, they found articles about HR overreach and woke workplace policies and the company that fired its way to failure. Interview after interview went nowhere. One hiring manager told me off the record that I was radioactive, that no company would risk me doing to them what I'd done to my former employer. That word, radioactive, kept me awake for weeks. Started examining my own assumptions. Every decision I'd made had felt justified in the moment. Every termination had been documented. Every complaint had been taken seriously. I'd followed the principles I'd been taught, believed women, centered their comfort, removed threats. But I'd never asked what would fill the vacuum. Never considered that the men I removed had been doing invisible labor. The staying late, the absorbing abuse, the volunteering for hard tasks, the making it work that doesn't appear on performance reviews. I'd seen their presence as the problem, never saw their contributions as the solution to problems I didn't even know existed. The women hadn't failed, they'd simply had boundaries, reasonable ones, healthy ones, ones I'd have applauded in any other context. But boundaries only work when someone else is willing to cross them. When everyone protects themselves, nothing gets protected. I'd created a workplace where women felt safe, also created one where nothing worked. Sit in my apartment now, 15 months unemployed, savings running thin, career effectively over. The women I championed are scattered across other companies, other industries. Some sent thank you notes after I was terminated, said I'd made a difference, said they'd never forget what I did for them. They don't know what I did to them. Don't know the company's collapse began with my certainty that men were the problem and their removal was the solution. Every complaint I took seriously. Every accusation I believed. Every termination I processed with righteous confidence. I was so sure I was building something better, built a graveyard instead. 230 jobs buried under my good intentions. The company that fired all the men couldn't function without them. Turns out, that was the point.